All right, there we go. Peace, peace, family. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism. Happy to be back. Having some technical. Happy to be back. Missed a few weeks, but we're back at it. We're going to have discussions of issues that are directly related to the African experience. Give me 1 second. I'm having some issues right here. All right, hopefully you got that rectified. But yeah. So welcome to We Charge Colonialism. And we are We Charge Colonialism. I'm Kimba of the Public Relations Committee.
Peace, family. I am Frank, Chair for the Political Action Committee and Revolutionary Repatriation back to Africa.
Hey, sorry about that. Having some issues. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I do. I do hear you. I do hear you.
All right. Give me 1 minute.
Okay.
All right. So all right. Sorry about that. Having issues with my setup. Like I said, we charge colonialism, and we charge colonialism because we're fighting against a system that was put in place over 5 centuries ago to develop a relationship between African people, European people, that has benefited Europeans at the expense of African labor. So this economic exploitation, this political oppression that African people are experiencing is a result of this colonial system. So, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about issues as it relates to African people and our relationship to the colonial powers. And so we're going to start off with our weekly roundup, and then we'll go into our reading in the second half. So we can start off with Frank. You going to tell us about what's happening in Libya, right?
Yeah, in Libya currently, since 2011, after NATO, so to speak, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton went to Libya and invaded Libya and killed the president, Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. Since that time up to now, it has become a chaos in Libya where no peace and the democracy that was promised by the American government to the Libyan people, it have never been given to the Libyan people, after which they kill their president and promise them a peaceful democracy. And the form of Western democracy have now been given to the people. And from that time up to now, Libya has faced numerous crises, disasters, and those things. So last week or a few days ago, the neighboring country, I don't want to say the neighboring country because it sounds divisive. Divisive. So I will say other head of states in Africa met in Algeria to discuss the issue facing the Libyan people. So as we speak right now, from what I got from the research, from understanding the research that I did, we have two forms of government in Libya. And one form is UN-supported government. So the United Nations have their own governmental system in Libya. Reason, I don't know. And the other set of government is the government of Muammar Gaddafi supporter. So these are two forces, two type of government in Libya fighting over Libya. UN-backed supported government and Muammar Gaddafi supporter, form of government. And then now, these two forms of government in Libya are supported by two different groups with foreign government. Now, that tells you alone that the UN-supported government, they are being supported by foreign entity, either the United States or NATO, as you know, because this whole conflict in Libya was started by NATO, was started by Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, or by the United States government. So what happened here now, the conflict in Libya is affecting some other African nations, or the other nation within bordering Libya and so forth. It's affecting those nations. So these head of states met in Algeria to discuss how they can transform Libya, to a peaceful, nation. In doing that, they also come to find out, and they discuss that there are foreign military in Libya. So who are those foreign military in Libya? What will foreign military be doing in Libya? And they also found out that there are missionary, foreign missionary in Libya. So their concern here now is, how can they get those foreign military in Libya and those foreign missionary in Libya out of Libya? And that's the only way peace will be transformed in Libya. So the question here is, who are those foreign military, which of course we know, and who are those foreign missionary, which of course we know? We can say some of those foreign military are forces of the United States, because they took the war there. They started the war. When Muammar Gaddafi was alive, there was no foreign military there and all of those things. So that is what's going on the African continent, or let's say in Libya right now, in a discussion that's going on. But what I want to get from this video is that we Africans, we have so many lessons that we can learn from, but we fail to learn from it. We have so many history that we can go and use, as a dictionary to guide us, but we fail to learn from it. Now, the issue I have with the African leaders is this: why will you want to sit and wait until foreign invader, alien come on your continent and cause disaster, and then before you wake up to regroup, or before you group yourself to go and solve the problem, which then becomes so expensive, because getting those foreign military out of Libya and those missionaries out of Libya, it's not going to be easy. It's not something that you're just going to wake up and get it out. So why do you want to wait to make things so expensive? It is time for us to organize. In fact, first of all, if they were going to organize, or how they call it, NATO or Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton was never going to go in Africa. If they were going to support Muammar Gaddafi, if they were going to put an end to it, AU and the rest of the African head of state was going to say, no, NATO, this is our business. Because at the end of the day, when you come in here and create your problem, it's going to affect us, and we are the one going to solve this problem. So we don't need you here. It was a time to regroup, to organize and put stop to NATO. But you sat down there, these people came in, these people out of the country, the democracy they promised to give to the people, they have not given it to the people, and up to now, KR is in the region. And then now you want to group yourself, you want to organize yourself, which then become expensive to do. So that's the problem, in Libya right now. And there was another thing that I did not see in our meeting. The United States government that caused the problem was never in our meeting. They should have invited Barack Obama in that meeting. They should have invited Hillary Clinton in that meeting. They should have invited NATO in that meeting. Why will NATO go and cause the problem and then solve the problem? NATO is absent. Obama is absent. Hillary Clinton is absent. They should invite these people in the meeting because they caused the problem, and ask them, where is the Western democracy you say you want to give to the people? Were the people now better under Gaddafi as compared to your democracy? So that's the question, and these are the thing we are looking at, and that's a problem on the African continent or in Libya right now. And the foreign, let's say the head of states of African nations are getting together, but they are now tackling the issue and they are not asking the real question to the real people.
Yeah, appreciate that, Frank. Thanks for bringing that, the news, and also appreciate the analysis as well. What I was thinking about when you talked about governments, foreign governments involving themselves, and missionaries going into Libya, it just made me think about this history of colonialism. And so, it started off with white faces, but today, you'll see black faces going into these African nations with colonial intentions, or with the influence of colonial ideas and policies. So when I think of Libya, you brought up the missionaries, and we have to remember, like, when these people are coming in to African countries, they're coming in telling the people in the country this is what they need to do. So they come in with this like paternalistic sort of trying to create this paternalistic relationship where Africans are treated like children on the continent and in the diaspora as well. Like, this has been the history. And so, with Libya, just like other African nations, they may have conversations among themselves, but Europeans, Americans, these foreign powers, they're getting together, sitting at the table, and African people and African leaders are not sitting at that table with them. And I'm talking about today. And they're making decisions about Africa's future. They're making decisions about African people's future. So, whenever we come together and decide on our future, our destiny, it has to be revolutionary, because if we're coming to the table with European or colonial powers looking for reforms within the system, there's no way that they're going to relinquish their power or change the structure of the system to benefit African people, especially if it's going to be a threat to their power. So I think that's something to keep in mind. But appreciate this Libya situation, because one of the things I was reading a few weeks ago was how Africans from Libya were fleeing to Italy, seeking refuge in Italy. Came across the article, and they were talking about African migrants in Italy living in slave conditions. And so it's crazy how these Europeans, and I'll wrap it up, how these Europeans or these colonizers, because when I say Europeans, I talk about white Americans too, but that may not be clear to everyone. So, but when white people went into Africa, they made Africans dependent. That's colonialism right there. They economically exploit the people. And so Africans became dependent on them. And so when you have a situation where you have the people who created this dependency and you have to flee to their country in order to fix your conditions or to advance your conditions, like, that's a serious contradiction that needs to be overturned. So I know I said a lot, but I don't know if Frank, you had any last things before we move on to the next topic?
The last thing I would just add was, like, I mentioned already.
You're on mute, Frank.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself. Yeah, the last thing I want to talk about, like I mentioned, and it's just part of the solution to the African.
I can't hear you, Frank. Is that me?
Yeah, I think that's you. That's you. But I can hear you though.
I don't hear you. I don't know if that's.
Can you still hear me?
The issue.
All right, log back in. All right, so like I was saying, part of the solution, like I already mentioned, or how to call it already, from my earlier statement, the solution to the African problem here is we have to organize ourselves, because If African leaders were organized, if African leaders were united, NATO was never going to go to Africa to invade Libya and to kill Muammar Gaddafi. It all had to do with organization. These Western countries, they don't have African interests. What they have is their interest. Whenever you see them talking about any African leaders or any African nation, they are running propaganda. It's not in our interest. They are never going to do anything on our continent in our interest if it is not in their interest. So African leaders should know that we have so many lessons from these Western countries that we can learn from it and try to desist from them. We can never work with these people because their interest will always be different. And typical example is the Libya case right now. Where is Hillary Clinton? Where is Barack Obama? Where is NATO to have been in that meeting to discuss and ask them, you promise that you are going to give Libya, the Libyan people, a good governance that Muammar Gaddafi was not given to them. And now when you kill this president, and up to now, you have not given the Western form of democracy. You promised the people. The education that Gaddafi did not give the people, you promised you did not give to them. All the facility that Gaddafi gave to them, you promised them that you are going to do more than that, and you have not given it to them. Where are they? And the African head of state are not holding the right people that need to be here accountable. And that is part of the reason of Africa keep going down the drain, because the leader we have, they are so afraid that they will sit and Western leader come and take advantage of them. And then after that, then they sit down there and start figuring out what to do when the damage has been done.
Indeed, indeed. So we're going to move on to the next topic. Want to appreciate or acknowledge everybody who's tuning in. Continue to tune in. We are here every Saturday at 10 a.m. So, we're going to move on to what's happening in Ethiopia before we move into our reading for today. Just to give people a heads up, we're going to be reading we're on chapter 9, page 55 from Kwame Nkrumah's. We're still reading from Kwame Nkrumah's book, Class Struggle in Africa. So everyone should have access to the reading for today. So, we covered Ethiopia a few times on We Charge Colonialism. Just want to give an update that, there's still conflict and struggle that's happening in Ethiopia between the Ethiopian government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front. This struggle has been going on for the last 10 months, and it doesn't seem like there's any end in sight. The conflict began with the election of Abiy Ahmed as prime minister. Abiy Ahmed came in as prime minister and looked to sort of restructure the government and make some dramatic changes, which was going to affect people from the Tigray People's Liberation Front, who was exercising political and economic power and domination in the country, I think since 90 or 91 maybe. And so these changes was met with resistance from the Tigray People's Liberation Front, where they attacked a military base in northern Ethiopia. This resulted in military operations against the Tigray People's Liberation Front. And so, this is the story. Of course, this resulted over the last 10 months. We have seen a humanitarian crisis in Ethiopia. There has been accusations of rape and mass massacres on both sides that need to be addressed. But when it comes to this conflict, I'm not here to pick a side, and I'm not here to say I'm definitely not here to back the Tigray People's Liberation Front because they have a history of contradictions within that country that has millions of Ethiopians really looking for change. They really don't support that regime. But at the same time, this conflict, though, is inflicting pain and suffering over millions of 2 millions of Ethiopian people, African people, as a result of a dispute between what I see a dispute between bourgeois forces. And that's what the real issue is. You have a bourgeois regime that comes into power and is looking to strip power from a bourgeois regime that has been dominating that country for so long. So, how does these changes that's taking place really going to benefit the African people is the real question. And so, how is this conflict going to benefit, whoever comes out? Because at the end of the day, there has to be an accord. These people are going to have to sit at the table and make a decision on how to move forward. That's going to incorporate all the people of Ethiopia. And so, with that being said, the people who are on the front line, who are being killed in Ethiopia at the expense of the bourgeois class, who wants to maintain their position of power. That's the real contradiction in this conflict. But that's what's happening. And at the end of the day, what's going on with Ethiopia, to bring up another contradiction, is their dependency on foreign aid. The United States of America Ethiopia is the biggest recipient of American foreign aid, which says a lot. Ethiopia being the second most populous country in Africa. And so there's talks by these European powers and the United States on what they can do to try to bring a resolution to this conflict. And one of the things they're talking about is sanctions, because they have the power to strangle Ethiopia politically and economically. And so when we had these conversations about, particular African countries, we talked about Libya, we talked about Ethiopia, but it just represents a microcosm of what's happening on the African continent and to African people in general, where we have this dependency on the system of colonialism, the system that's oppressing and exploiting us. And so we have to break away from that system. And so, Ethiopia has some other problems, but that is a fundamental issue that they're dealing with. So no matter what the resolution is in this conflict, how does it change their relationship with the colonial powers at the end of the day? That's going to be the next step. Are the people still going to be living in poverty in Ethiopia? Are people still going to be exploited and oppressed in Ethiopia? Is there still going to be, an authoritative regime that's in power that is only looking to benefit their constituency? But I know I said a lot, Frank. You want to add on?
No. I mean, you actually summarize it. You actually, explain the situation and the problem as well. So, in adding to that, that is why these things are very good for us to learn and for us to read, and read from book that relate to our situation and our narrative, like what we do. I want to talk about two things here when it relates to Ethiopia, and that cover the entire African nation, on the continent and globally as well. Now, and those two things are one. Nkrumah talk about what? Neocolonialism. And other revolutionary leaders like Karma also talk about Sekou Touré, how they call it, not Sekou Touré, but Kwame Touré, also talk about organization building. Those two things are very important and crucial to our total liberation in our time. Now, Nkrumah talk about neocolonialism, which is the last stage. And the last time I think we'll talk about it. Will it really be the last stage? Yes, it will be only if it will be the last stage if we organize, if we group ourselves, right, and become totally self-independent and self-determined, race as a whole. If not, it's never going to be the last stage. Now, part of the reason of we organizing ourselves, coming together and building ourselves is to start being dependent on Western society. Is to start being dependent on Western society. Now, if we group ourselves and organize ourselves worldwide and build ourselves and become self-independent and self-determined people, self-independent as well as we feed ourselves and we have our own scientists and those things, we will no longer depend on Western influence. And in that case, even if, because what we're saying here is the neo-colonialists, that is blackface doing the job of the whiteface, they don't have money. They are not equipped. What equipped them is their masters that they are working for are the one equipped. So they support them. So if we remain divided and not united and not organized, we will not win. So that is why Ethiopia alone cannot win, because what happened here is they will sanction Ethiopia if Ethiopia even try to group themselves within that region to fight the neo-colonialists. They will have to put sanction on Ethiopia. They will have to come out with some kind of a propaganda. And you know who control UN. So when they come up with their propaganda and take it to UN, of course, what are they going to do? They're going to sanction, how they call it, Ethiopia, or they're going to sanction any other country that may want to do the same thing as well. So the only thing that can liberate us as a race, the African nations need to come together and leaders need to come together, and the ordinary citizens, we all as well need to come together to build ourselves. In our case, as long as we are totally independent and not dependent on Western society in any other way, they can never win us. For example, we see in the Western world here, when what happened, I think the United States put sanctions on Russia. What did they do to Russia? Russia is not dependent on the United States. Russia do everything for herself. They have their scientists, they have their agriculturists, their food, everything. They provided for themselves. So it did not shake Russia. And Russia have her own currency. So it didn't do nothing to them. But the African nation, we forgetting to know that we as a whole, we are a continent. That's the reality of it. We are a continent. So we are the one ourselves holding ourselves back and allowing people to take advantage of us. When we have the solution, when we have everything it takes in our hand to govern ourselves, to tell people back off, to tell people we are done with you. We ourselves, it is in our hand. What are we waiting for? If we organize, sanction will do nothing to us, because I mean, we have African in the diaspora who are scientists, who are engineering, who are everything, and we have everything on the continent. All it left is for us to go back home and take charge. That's all we need to do. So if we organize as one people, sanction will do us nothing, and neo-colonialism will fail.
Appreciate that, Frank. I think one of the things you had mentioned organization, and I think one of the things that we do, we charge colonialism, is we work to organize other African people, whether it's on the continent or the diaspora, to actually come up with a solution to the problem that we're facing every day under these conditions. And I think it's very important when we talk about even the media aspect, because part of the fight against colonialism is, of course, the physical decolonization, but there's also the mental decolonization, to be able to at least have some sort of influence on the message that's being put out there, or control over the message that's being put out there to other African people, because, of course, the colonial media tends to manipulate us into viewing our problems through their lens. And so, we have to look at our problems through our own lens and come up with revolutionary solutions to it. Again, I want to appreciate everybody that's viewing, that's tuning in. We're going to transition to the book reading. We're on page 55, chapter 9. And I just want to encourage everybody too. We talk about organization. I want to encourage everybody that's viewing. One thing to share. That's one thing you can do, is share this live stream. Share this YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're viewing from. Also, if you want to be a member, go to WeCharge. Email us at WeChargeColonialism. info@WeChargeColonialism.org. Send us an email. And let's talk about how you can get involved and be a part of this organization. And definitely visit our website, WeChargeColonialism.org, to get more information about our organization and the work that we're doing. And there's media articles up there too that you can read. because these discussions, these issues that we're facing across the world, we like to deepen that. We like to give an analysis of that so we can look at it through our own lens. So with that being said, we're going to make this transition, and I'm going to start on page 55. All right, colonialism, imperialism, and neocolonialism are expressions of capitalism and of bourgeois economic and political aspirations. In Africa, under colonialism, capitalist development led to the decline of feudalism and to the emergence of new class structures. Before the colonial period, the power of the chiefs, which was generally not based on land ownership, was strictly limited and controlled. The stool and not the chief was sacred. Control was exercised by a council of elders. Colonialism reinforced the power of chiefs through the system of indirect rule. They were given new powers, were sometimes paid, and became, for the most part, the local agents of colonialism. In some colonized areas, new chiefs were appointed by the colonial power. These became known as warrant chiefs. Imperialists utilized the feudal and tribal nobility to support their exploitation, and this resulted in a blunting of social contradictions, since the feudal and semi-feudal strata maintained a stronghold over the peasant masses and inhibited the growth of revolutionary organizations. Relics of feudalism still exist in many parts of Africa. For example, in northern Nigeria and in North and West Cameroon, tribal chiefs live on the exploitation of peasants, who not only have to pay them tributes and taxes, but who often have to do forced labor. But although feudal relics remain, the colonial period ushered in capitalist social structures. The period was characterized by the rise of petty bourgeoisie and of a small but influential national bourgeoisie, consisting in the main of intellectuals, civil servants, members of the professions, and of officers in the armed forces and police. There was a marked absence of capitalists among the bourgeoisie, since local business enterprise was on the whole discouraged by the colonial power. Anyone wishing to achieve wealth and status under colonialism was therefore likely to choose a career in the professions, the civil service, or the armed forces, because there were so few business opportunities. Foreigners controlled mining, industrial enterprises, banks, wholesale trade, and large-scale farming. In the most of Africa, the bourgeoisie was, in fact, for the most part, petty bourgeoisie. You want to discuss what we read so far? I know it's live.
Yes. We can discuss that. So, from this, how they call it, part of the reading of this chapter, what I got from there, in order for capitalism or the capitalist system to succeed in Africa, what it did was they kind of studied us, and that's what Nkrumah said. And, we cannot sleep on a neo-colonialist because they are never asleep. And in that, it also means that it's not like going to bed physically to sleep, but we have to keep learning about these people and try to understand them, because I tell you, they do understand us because they learn about us every day and night. Now, in order for the capitalist system to succeed in Africa, what it did, first of all, let me just backslide back. Now, what this chapter of the book is telling us is that when you see corruption that is so rampant in Africa, these are some of the root cause. It started from here, because in order for them to succeed, in order for a capitalist or how they call it, institution to succeed, corruption have to be the ultimate goal. If not, they cannot succeed. That's what the book is telling us here. Corruption in a capitalist system, in order for us to succeed, corruption had to be the ultimate goal. And we heard that, we saw that from the reading here. Before they succeeded, they have to use, how they call it, even the native people, they have to use the chief, the elder people, and think, right? They have to use them, bring them into the system, and use them indirectly, to corrupt their people. And in that, they begin to pay them. So now they were the company to pay the elder chief instead of the chief and or the native people paying them. They were the one paying the people, because the people were being corrupted and corrupting their people, and corrupting their own self, not knowing that, right? So this is where it started from, and then up to today, that's why people in power in Africa, they all they do, because they all through all their life, what they have learned is to obey. They learn how to obey. Once you obey your master, once you obey your superior, everything will fall in place. And that is why African people are known of obeying in this current time. They still obey their master, they still obey their oppressor, because they feel that their master or their oppressor put them in a position. And that was what happened during this time. And Nkrumah was actually trying to describe that, look, this thing, before capitalism succeeded, it succeeded through the influence of bourgeoisie. It succeeded through the influence of with all those things. So that is why, went on in Africa. That is why, gave birth to the current situation we face in Africa. Not to say there was not corruption, not to say, but during that time that he mentioned feudalism, if there was corruption, you have the full punishment if you are caught. But these days, when the capitalist came in order to succeed, corruption became part of the system. In fact, before you work in a system, you have to be a corrupt person. That's the only way they will hire you. If you are not a corrupt person, they won't hire you. And what will happen? They will kill you. And that is why during the 60s, most of our African revolutionary leaders were killed, because those people were not corrupt people. They were fighting for freedom. They were fighting to be independent. They were fighting to be separate from the Western system, which is so corrupt, because they wanted a system that would fit the African perspective.
Yeah, that's a great point, or great points that you had made. The last thing you said, as far as regarding the corruption, a lot of African leaders on the continent and the diaspora were assassinated, not just in the 60s, 70s, 80s. We were seeing it, each decade, with anybody who represented an alternative to the European colonial capitalist system was deemed a threat. And so, they were taken out, they were jailed. We still have political prisoners to this day as a result of their political and economic position. And, that's something that we have to keep in mind always as we continue to build and disrupt and destroy the system of colonialism, is that these people who are that's upholding this system will do anything and everything to keep it in place. And I think, like, going back to the first paragraph, I think that was an important statement that was made when Nkrumah said colonialism, imperialism, and neocolonialism are expressions of capitalism and of bourgeois economic and political aspirations, because the structure of colonialism, imperialism, neocolonialism facilitates the expanding and growth of capitalism. Capitalism as a system of exploitation, and it has to, in order for it to survive, it has to expand. And so when we go back to the 15th century, 16th century, and when Europeans were looking for other lands to exploit, they set up these colonies all over the world, with the intention to exploit them economically. And so they had to set up systems of political and military domination. And so when we talk about colonialism, imperialism, and neocolonialism, these are systems of political and military domination with the intent to exploit a people economically, because at the end of the day, it's about economics. That's how people live. That's how we survive in our environments, to be able to develop economic relationships with each other, to develop an economy. And so what happens when we talk about colonialism? Colonialism is when another group of people exercise control over another people and another area with the intent to exploit them economically. So we have to keep that in mind. And so this is a system we're dealing with all the way to this day. It's been designed to do that, and it hasn't been disrupted yet. The other last point before we go back to reading is, you spoke about it, but the Warrant Chiefs. The Warrant Chiefs were the predecessors of what we call neo-colonists. After colonialism ended, and or one phase of colonialism ended, and we transitioned to a period that Nkrumah calls neo-colonialism, where we have African leaders or Black leaders, because or when we talk about the diaspora, those Africans in the diaspora here in the United States of America, for instance, we can go to any urban city and see Black leaders, people in positions of power, who are like those Warren Chiefs. They are the neo-colonists. They are the people who are being paid off to represent the system of colonialism. They are the people who are being paid off so they can continue to legitimize the system of colonialism, because they benefit from it. The Warren Chiefs benefited from it. The African leaders, neo-colonial puppets benefited from it. And right here, in the United States of America, we have Black people who are in relative positions of power, who benefit from the system, who continue to facilitate the exploitation of African people. So I know I said, let me move on. But it's what he's saying is deep. So it's just like, it got me really thinking. So we're going to go to the first paragraph, page 56. It was partly the restrictions placed on the business outlets of the African bourgeoisie, which led it to oppose imperialist rule. After the end of the Second World War, when the pressure for national liberation was increased, imperialists were compelled to admit part of the African bourgeoisie to spheres from which it had previously been excluded. More Africans were allowed into the state machinery and into foreign companies. Thus, a new African elite closely linked with foreign capital was created. At the same time, repressive measures were taken against progressive parties and trade unions. Several colonialist wars were fought, as for example, the wars against the people of Madagascar, Cameroon, and Algeria. It was during this period that the foundations of neocolonialism were laid. During the national liberation struggle, the petty bourgeoisie tends to divide into three main categories. Firstly, there are those who are heavily committed to colonialism and to capitalist economic and social development. These are in the main the officials and professional men and agents of foreign firms and companies. Secondly, there are the revolutionary petty bourgeoisie, the nationalists, who want to end colonial rule, but who do not wish to see a transformation of society. They form a part of the national bourgeoisie. Thirdly, there are those who sit on the fence and are prepared to be passive onlookers. Before I go into the next paragraph, you want to build on that? Those three different types of what do you say, petty bourgeoisie? Hey, you're on mute, Frank, if you're talking.
Yeah. It's so sad, man. Like all three have no solution. Actually, all three have no solution for the African, concern. Let me put it that way. For the African concern, some might say the African struggle, but all three, did nothing, and all three again fit in a category of most of the leaders we see in the African entity, whether on the continent or whether in the diaspora. You see a lot of African who says they are Pan-Africanists, right? But you cannot be a Pan-Africanist at the same time you sitting in a meeting with the same people, and you want to discuss. So what concern of African issues are you going to take on our table? There will be no concern. There will be nothing to discuss on our table. You cannot be a Pan-Africanist and then be a lukewarm Pan-Africanist. You have to be a Pan-Africanist and be straightforward. You cannot, that's what Nkrumah said, forward ever and backward never. So you cannot be a Pan-African and then you start thinking about going back, or you start thinking about other people, your master. You start thinking about your oppressor. You start thinking about giving the information. You start thinking about getting help from your oppressor or getting help from your master. You cannot be that kind of a Pan-Africanist. And these are the people that Nkrumah tried to talk about here. There are people that want to go on for the struggle, but they feel that without their master being involved within our struggle, whether financially or giving arm and ammunition, support, they cannot go. So they will always have to consult their master, and you can't do that. Once you do that, your master want to think that oh, okay, so you want to be independent. Your master going to put restriction on you, and that alone going to put fear in you. So these are the people that Nkrumah talked about, and these are the people we see whether in Africa or in the diaspora that are leading the African masses.
Hey, right on, right on. I mean, you said a lot. I think when I read this paragraph, the second one stood out to me. Well, and I think they're all important to dissect. But the second one, the revolutionary petty bourgeoisie, and you talked about sort of like within the Pan African movement, you have people who represent different political and economic ideologies, and some of these people who consider themselves, whether Black nationalists, revolutionary, or Pan Africanists, they don't really want to destroy the system of colonial capitalism. They just want to replace the European as the authority over the system. And so that's what we have to be very mindful of, when we're trying to, when we're talking about bringing about revolutionary changes, we're talking about wiping the system out completely. And so when you go back to the liberation movements, and I think, this is what Nkrumah is getting to, you had these people who were revolutionaries, but they were petty bourgeoisie nationalists still. Like, they were just looking to take the reins of the colonial system. These are people who were educated, not all, but you had people who were being educated in colonial institutions. People who think that, Christianity is, the best religion or the right religion, as a result of what was given to them by the European. I'm talking about the European Christianity that was brought to them. That you have African people being educated in these colonial schools who think that Western civilization represents an advancement, in African societies were backwards, were heathens and uncivilized. This indoctrination has led African people to want to imitate Europeans and not necessarily bring about a transformation in the system. So I'll move on for the sake, I see time ticking. So I'll go into the last paragraph. In general, few members of the African bourgeoisie amassed sufficient capital to become significant in the business sector. The African bourgeoisie remains therefore largely a comprador class, sharing in some of the profits which imperialism drains from Africa. Under conditions of colonialism and neocolonialism, it will never be encouraged sufficiently to become strong in the economic sphere, since this would mean creating business competitors. The local bourgeoisie must always be subordinate partners to foreign capitalism. For this reason, it cannot achieve power as a class or govern without the close support of reactionary feudal elements within the country, or without the political, economic, and military support of international capitalism. Imperialism may foster liberation movements in colonial areas when capitalist exploitation has reached the stage of giving rise to a labor movement which seriously threatens the interests of international capitalism. By the granting of political independence to bourgeois parties, reactionary indigenous forces can thereby be put into positions of power which enable them to cement their alliance with the international bourgeoisie. In practically every national liberation struggle, there emerges two liberation parties. One of them is the genuine People's Party, committed not only to national liberation, but to socialism. The other aims at political independence, but intends to preserve capitalist structures and is supported by imperialism. In the majority of the independent African states, there exist embryonic elements of a rural bourgeoisie. In Ghana, large farmers and cocoa brokers come into this category. According to the 1960 census, the rural bourgeoisie numbered 1.4 million, while the urban middle class was estimated at 300,000. This was in a population 24% of which was defined as urban. In most cases, both urban and rural bourgeoisie are not conscious of themselves as a class, though they are very much aware of their strength and importance and conscious of the threat to their privileged positions in society by the increasing pressure of worker-peasant resistance. In the struggle for political independence, urban workers, peasants, and the national bourgeoisie allied together to eject the colonial power. Class cleavages are temporarily blurred, but once independence is achieved, class conflicts come to the fore over the social and economic policies of the new government. It is possible for classes to combine in the post-colonial situation, and the nature of the government is assessed by which particular class interests are dominant. Theorists argue that proletariat and petty bourgeoisie should join together to win the peasantry in order to attack the bourgeoisie. Ignore the fact that the petty bourgeoisie will always, when it comes to the pinch, side with the bourgeoisie to preserve capitalism. It is only peasantry and proletariat working together who are wholly able to subscribe to policies of all-out socialism, where conflict involves both political and economic interests. The economic always prevails. I'm gonna read this last paragraph. All right. So the African bourgeoisie, in common with their counterpart in other parts of the world, hold the view that governments exist to protect private property and that success is measured by wealth, the acquisition of property, and social status. They set up bourgeois organizations such as clubs and professional associations on the model of those existing in the bourgeois societies of Europe and the Americas. They want politics to be confined to the struggles between various property groups. It is common in Africa and in other coup areas of the world, notably Asia and Latin America, for there to be a succession of bourgeois coup d'etats in a single state. The property fight the property for political supremacy. For the independent states of Africa, Asia, and Latin America have a similar historical past in that they have suffered from imperialism and colonialism, and after political independence have in almost every case been swept into the orbit of neocolonialism. In this situation, the majority are governed by bourgeois elements who compete among themselves for political domination. I just was talking about this with Ethiopia. For whichever group succeeds in dominating the political scene is in a position to enhance its property and status. Other factors such as regionalism and tribalism obviously enter into the struggle for power among the indigenous bourgeoisie, but the essential point remains that these struggles take place among the property class and are not struggles between classes. All right, so I'm gonna end it there. We could just have some last thoughts on this. Yeah, but I would just say that, I definitely, reading that just now, it took me right back to Ethiopia, what I was raised in as far as this struggle between bourgeois forces, petty bourgeois forces. And after the struggle, with the system of exploitation and oppression remains in place. So, we're talking about a global system, an imperial system, that has been set up where you have Walter Rodney, I believe, talked about it, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. But another, I think a Latin American author, Andre Gunnar Frank, talked about this system that has been set up where you have metropoles and satellites and metropoles, where these satellites being the countries that are colonized or was formerly colonized, still representing they're sort of the satellites of the colonial powers or the imperial powers. And so even within those satellite countries, the countries that are being exploited by these advanced countries, quote unquote advanced countries, they have a structure within that system that allows the global system of exploitation to continue to take place. And so, and this is what we have within the eternal colonies of the United States of America and the colonies that are in Africa. You have Africans fighting each other to be able to find themselves closer to the oppressor and the exploiter so that they can benefit more from the system. But Fred, go ahead. You wanted to add?
Yeah, just to add a quick, what I got from the reading as well is it's kind of very important. He mentioned something where he said political independent, and where he said, for political independent, you will find even, I'm just going to summarize it, the bourgeoisie or the petit bourgeoisie, and also the masses, the ordinary people, coming together and fighting for political independence. And once they achieve that political independence, the next thing that they don't achieve together is the economic independence. And now, at the next stage, after the political independence, and then the second stage, the economic independence, instead of the petit bourgeoisie or the bourgeoisie keep working with the common people or keep working with the masses, they forget the masses and then leave the masses behind, and then in turn want to work on the doctrine of their master, on the doctrine of the colonialist, right? And now, and that was what you also mentioned earlier. You cannot fight for how they call it independent or total liberation, and then you intend to work on the doctrine of the neo-colonialist. So in achieving the political independence that they all do together, but when it comes to achieving the economic independence, they forget about the masses and then turn towards their masters for help. And this is where it become the problem, and even into how they call it, the African society as well. It is a problem and stuff. So recently we just saw in Zimbabwe, where politically fighting for what, independent or some kind of a freedom, they all came together. But after that economic freedom, now they cannot what, fight together. And the moment they want to fight together, what happened here? And then you find the oppressor, you find America or the United States government talking about, in fact, increasing the sanction on a country that is already struggling, that is already dying, that 8 people are suffering to survive. And then you put sanction on the country, and then you watch, you sit and watch the people beg, you sit and watch the people suffer, you sit and watch the people starve, because they want to work partnership, not with you, but with other people. And partnership with other people means that your interest will not be protected. And then you put sanction on it, you sit and watch the people suffer. So that is, the next stage that I just got from this reading as well. Fighting for how they call it political independence is one thing, but gaining economic, how they call it, achievement or independence is another thing, where the bourgeoisie or the petit bourgeoisie will end up joining the oppressor, because at the end of the day, they want to leave power with money, with how they call it, riches and those things, and it becomes a problem to to the struggle.
I appreciate that, and I think that's very important, that we do several tides, with the system, so that we can exercise, our freedoms and rights without someone continuously trying to trample on it. So, we are people that understand, some of us understand that we do have natural rights and freedom, and we go out and exercise that every day. We don't look at colonialism as something that's going to prevent us from living, but at the same time, we recognize it and say, hey, we shouldn't have to have these struggles. I shouldn't have to try to exercise my natural rights. And someone is constantly coming up with some policies or laws that are going to strip that from me or make that more difficult from me. And so we want that independence, not just as individuals, but as people. And so I think that, that's very important to take from this. But I want to appreciate everybody for being here. We're almost at the top of the hour. Just want to encourage everyone to continue to share this. Tune in every Saturday at 10 a.m. We're going to be here. We're going to have these discussions. Our co-host, African Esquire, I think, is on the motherland right now. That's why she couldn't be with us, but she is truly missed. And, again, find out how you can be a part of what we're doing at We Charge Colonialism, send us an email at info@wechargecolonialism.org, and we can have that discussion and find out, talk to you about how you can be a part of this fight. Frank, you want to say anything before we close?
Yeah, I want to add something quick. So on the 25th of this month, we're going to have our net discussion on Clubhouse. So, and the topic, we might change the topic, but for now, the topic is, why should African people organize? That would be the topic. That is the topic for now, in discussion, but it might change because we are still discussing whether we should change our topic. But for now, that is a topic, as I'm working on the flyer right now. So the topic is, why should African people organize? So on the 25th, 8 p.m., come on live on Clubhouse. As we discuss, we need your input. We need your solution as to why we should organize. And the discussion going to be based on everybody, so not people you're going to see on the stream. So in fact, mean that we want to hear from you, not really from us. We want to hear from you. Why should we organize? And stuff. So come out on the 25th, 8 p.m. and come and tell us why we should organize.
All right, cool. So until next week, I want to say peace, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you. Peace.